Melinda. Thanks so much for joining the Ultrarunner magazine, YouTube, and podcast channel. Basically, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. My name's Melinda Marchal. I live in London. I'm a working mum with 3 kids. My youngest is 3, my eldest is 9. And I ran a really long way for fun.
And you've just completed the Chester Ultramarathon, 50 mile, and you came first lady. How did that feel?
Oh, I couldn't believe it. I was so blown away. I went into the race with 3 goals. The first one was to finish. The second one was I wanted to do it in sub 10 hours comfortably. And I had a secret goal that I did want to at least, podium place. But you never know how it's going to go on the day. And I didn't actually tell anyone that I thought I might be fast enough to do that. And then it just all worked out so well on the day. I'm just really lucky that, the support and the marshals were all brilliant. The aid stations were in the right place. My nutrition lined up, my training lined up. I had a good playlist. It was, it's just one of those days where things come together.
Playlist is important. No, so just tell us a little bit about your background in terms of certainly the last kind of couple of years, because I know that you've had your own kind of fair share of struggles, haven't you?
Yeah. Well, I actually only started running about 3.5 years ago. I started off doing couch to 5K. I was actually a sporty kid, but once you career motherhood, I hadn't really all the exercise had fallen by the wayside. So I started doing couch to 5K, loved it, realized that I didn't have any hobbies of my own, and built up from there up to sort of half marathon distance. Like the idea of going further, but then an unfortunate accident in 2020 meant that I actually broke my back. It was a silly skiing accident, completely nobody's fault, just a bad fall. But I ended up cracking 3 sacral vertebrae in my back, which meant no running, limited movement. And this was just before lockdown. So I was homeschooling 2 kids with an unruly toddler in the midst as well. And, it was a tough time. Lockdown was a tough time for everyone. And everyone had, their own reasons for struggling. But for me, running was very much a release and a place to get me time. And so suddenly, sort of at home with all of these kids, I said, right, that's it. I need to set myself a goal, a recovery goal. And so I wanted to do an ultra. I hadn't even done a marathon at that point. But it was something that I'd already been thinking about before the accident, and it just galvanized me into action. So I had a few months of not doing anything. So I did a lot of reading, training techniques and nutrition strategies and lots of race profiles as you do. And I just set my sights on it.
So in terms of your recovery as well, I guess it was basically, could you tell us a little bit more about it? I don't know enough. So tell us about what you went through in terms of that.
Yeah, so initially it started off doctor's orders, no running. So I was able to walk. Luckily, I wasn't wheelchair bound,
right.
But even picking up my toddler was I noticed that I probably shouldn't be doing this. But it started off with power walking, so that I wouldn't have any impact, and then it was just a very, very gentle, almost restarting couch to 5K again. I actually did low HR training was how I restarted.
Okay.
So I, had a target of 137, 140 beats per minute for me. And so I would run until my heart rate tipped over that point, and then I would have to walk, which when I first started, because obviously I'd lost so much fitness, it meant that even a slight incline, I was having to walk.
Yeah.
It was very frustrating, and I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, I'm never going to get up to where I used to be. But amazingly, over about 5 or 6 weeks, suddenly I was able to run up that incline or that hill and not have to walk at that same height. I really did notice seeing results. So essentially it was a combination of run, walking and low HR training that really got me back on track. And slowly but surely I was able to increase the mileage, increase the distance. I'm a big fan of the 80-20 training methodology. So 20% is high intensity, and the other 80% is just super easy, like conversational, really not taking it far at all. But it means that it helps me avoid injury. It helps me, actually stick to a training plan, because I'm not thinking like, oh, it's this really hard session again. I'm just sort of more inclined to get out there because I know it's just an easy run. And obviously that lower sort of intensity really helped with my recovery as well.
In terms of the preparations for the race itself and leading up to the events, what kind of things did you kind of go through there? What kind of training did you do in the immediate kind of 8-12 weeks prior to the race?
Right. Okay. So my training plan, I'm a big training plan fan. So I had a big training plan. It was a 19-week plan, and I had it all mapped out. And it was very much, I have 1 long run a week, 2 hard sessions, and 2-ish, maybe more, maybe less, depending on how busy my weeks are, just easy 1-hour runs. Sometimes I might swap out an easy run for indoor biking, just to make things manageable at home with the kids, or if I've got a niggle or something. The longer run obviously progressively longer as the weeks go on. My longest run before the event was about 50k. So that was just over 5 hours. And really what I would just try and do is find trails as much as possible and just seek out as much elevation as possible as well. Right. I live on the outskirts of London. It's fairly flat. There's not too much wilderness. So really it's just me finding where I can go. I could jump in a car for 20 minutes and drive to the Chilterns. So I did that twice. But also, I do loops of Richmond Park. I go to Horsenden Hill, just various places, just trying to find off-road territory. And if I see a hill, I'll go up it, and then maybe come down and then go up it again, just because I want to log that elevation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really kind of good, mindset to have as well. It's really useful come race day, isn't it? Certainly something that you can you've got in your toolbox, really, isn't it? The more that you've kind of put into the work that you put into the training. So in terms of it sounds like you like a bit of variation in your training, which is great, and it really kind of comes in useful when you do something like Chester, because there's a good proportion of canal initially in the race, and then it heads onto the Sandstone Trail. What were your favourite parts of the route, and particularly, and why?
Definitely Delamere Forest and Frodsham. It was really beautiful. I mean, along the canal path, it's nice and flat and we could get some good speed up, but it's quite a long straight stretch. And so then when we left the canal path, you had these fields that I knew they were going to be muddy because of all the wet weather that we'd had. So it was quite fun because it made a nice change, and I knew it was coming, so it wasn't a nasty surprise. I was like, right, getting the feet wet now. But it was the scenery in Delamere Forest, because you're going up and down, and there are some sort of like quite rocky, gorgy areas and sort of steps worn into the stone. It was just really pretty, and I just thought it was really nice.
It kind of keeps it kind of it keeps you thinking about your next step, doesn't it, rather than it just being the same old kind of thing, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
it
yeah,
is
it
very
just
beautiful.
keeps it varied and a bit more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. And in terms of like pacing plan, did you kind of follow any kind of pacing plan? Were you ahead, would you say, or is there any kind of sections where you also you move behind you, maybe your schedule, you know, and that side of things? Did you kind of incorporate anything or any expectations there?
Yeah. So I knew that definitely the first 20k, maybe even the first 30k was flat and on fairly good track. So I wanted to do that section fast because I knew that it was the best opportunity. Um, Obviously, without overdoing it, but I know from my own experience, I don't know if it's just being a woman that means that I'm less confident in my abilities, but I do tend to underestimate how quickly I'm going to do an event. I
Right.
tend to surprise myself. So I what I do is I start out faster than I think I should. And then if I can't hold on to that pace and I slow down, then so be it. I don't beat myself up over it, but I just try and hang on as long as I can. And often I find that actually I can do it for the whole time, and I've just underestimated myself.
Yeah.
Yet again. So that's sort of what happened. I knew I'd do the first section faster, which I did. Obviously, the trail sections you slow down much more just because the terrain's more difficult. But I was able to keep up a fairly good pace, and I was just hoping to see how long I could hold on to it for. And luckily, I kept going.
Yeah.
In the woods, it can be tricky to spot bits of tape in trees, especially if there's a turning
Yeah.
coming. But I mean, considering I didn't know the route, and I mean, obviously I'd done my research and I looked on the map, but uh, I got there in one piece, and I
Yeah.
don't think I got lost. Oh, I missed a turning by about 5 meters or something, and then had
Right.
to double back. There was a helpful chap behind me, said,
Give you a
"Who's this
shout.
way?" I said, "Thank you."
They're always helpful when well they can also kind of see somebody go wrong, you know. So it's that kind of like in that advantageous position, you know. So yeah, it's brilliant. And then when you crossed in the finish line, what was the emotions like for yourself?
Oh, I was just really happy. Unfortunately, my family couldn't be there to cheer me on. It was just too far for them to come, and obviously we've got tap dancing and swimming, and it's life. So it was a shame that they couldn't be there. But at the
Yeah.
same time, my husband's always really, really supportive of all the activities that I do. He is also an endurance athlete as well. He does triathlons.
Brilliant.
So he was updating me he was obviously looking at the trackers online saying, "You're the first lady, she's 2 kilometers behind you." So I was getting these texts, which was very sweet, but with the GPS, you're never 100% sure
Yeah.
if it was accurate or not. So all I knew was that I was first. So
Yeah.
I was just like, I just have to keep going. I don't know how far behind she is. I'll just keep going. So even though they weren't there when I crossed the finish line, he was there, on the phone to me. "Well done, you did it. It's amazing." So it was nice to know that he was still behind me the whole way, even though he couldn't
Yeah,
be there.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That means the world, doesn't it? You know, knowing that the family are, you know, taking a massive interest in what you're doing and supporting you. You know,
Yeah.
and it's not just that as well. I mean, it's you've also not just finished first at this particular Chester Ultra. You've got consistent results at other races. So I think it was Race to the Stones.
Race to the King.
Race to the King, sorry. Yeah. And
Yeah.
was it sixth position there? Something like
That was sixth place
that? Yeah, very good.
last year. That was my first ultra.
That's amazing.
I really wasn't expecting so good a place. But again, I seemed to surprise myself. And yeah, that was. I knew I wanted to do an ultra. I'd originally planned for a 50k for my first, but then some friends of my husband said, "Oh, we've just signed up to Race to the King. It's 50 miles, 54 miles. Do you want to do it?" And I was like, "Okay." And then there we are. So we actually ended up, my first marathon distance run was a training run for my first ultra. So I just sort of skipped the marathon part. But yeah, and then later on that year, I did the London Marathon, which was my first ever marathon event where I got a marathon medal and everything. Like, well, I've done a few of these in training runs, but great, I'll take the medal.
Well, that's absolutely brilliant. You know, from somebody that's, you know, certainly the journey over the last kind of 2 or 3 years, it's been you know, amazing kind of transformation and, you know, journey that you've had there. And I'm certain that everybody who's watching this, you know, they're all just kind of like, you know, broken back, you know, just astounded by, you know, you sharing that journey with us, really. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time today. And yeah, what's next for you?
Well, I have Round the Rock booked in August, which is an ultra in Jersey where you're running round the outside of the island. That one's close to my heart because I grew up in Jersey.
Oh, right, okay.
And I've got family there. I prefer to do events that are local, where I don't have to fly, just from a carbon footprint perspective. I find it hard to justify. I have made one concession though. This autumn, my husband and I are doing the Maltese Falcon, right, which is a multi-sport event in Malta. And you've got these 3 islands around Malta, and you sort of got to run across the island and then either swim or kayak between the islands. And anyway,
sounds pretty cool.
We have that. Yeah. So this is the one event, you know, in the last few years that we're actually flying to. But this is our couple's holiday without the kids. We just go up and do stupid running events. But
no,
that's the plan.
That's it's time together as well, though. You know, like you say, it is time together, and you've got to have that. You know.
Yeah, exactly. And then who knows after that? I may end up going longer distances. I'd quite fancy a multi-stage, but it's finding the time away from the kids. That's,
it's hard, isn't it? The multi-stage cost a fair bit more as well. Some of them, don't they? I think that's just one of the things as well. But no, we've no doubt that whatever you kind of put your mind to, you know, you'll absolutely smash. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. It was such a great event, and I really enjoyed myself. I couldn't believe that I'd ended up so far ahead. Actually, when they said I needed to hang around for the podium photo, then I said, "Oh well, how how far behind are they?" They said, "Oh, about half an hour." And so I couldn't believe it. I think that's why my lips are starting to turn a little blue in the photo, because I've been getting a bit cold. But no, it's I'm just happy to be out there representing busy working mums who can get out there, and you know, I'm just all about promoting making some time for yourself. It could be before I started running, and I don't know if you want to include this bit, but before I started running, I would, you know, have my husband say, "Oh, I'll look after the kids, you take some time for yourself," and I'd, you know, get my hair done or have a bubble bath or something. And looking back, that's not having time for yourself. That's basic hygiene. I didn't have any hobbies. I'd lost, you know, all of my hobbies when I became a mum. So when I started running, I realized, wow, this is a passion. This is me time. This is time away from the kids. It's having my own interests again. So it was really transformational, getting back into running. And then this trail running and ultra running, it's just part of what I do now. It's part of my makeup. And, you know, I just hope to be a role model for the kids and for anyone else who struggles to make time. It's very much, you know, with the support that I have, I'm able to find the time that works for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on that as well is that it really kind of helps in terms of, you know, having a bit of an out, you know, for mental health and things like that, isn't it, as well, you know, because it does help kind of alleviate any stress and things like that as well, doesn't it, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. Those are my 3 R's. That's what keeps me going in the long run. When I want to stop and walk, I'm like, no, I need to keep going. I've got the 3 R's. Because I think David Hall has 3 F's. I have 3 R's. It's resilience, role model, and release. So resilience, you know, that's strengthened body, strengthened mind, kind of resilience. Role model, I just want my kids to see that I can get out there and, you know, do great things and have my own life and my own interests.
Yeah.
And then release is time away from the kids. Doing my own thing and not being a mum for 5 minutes.
No, you've got to have a bit of you time. You've got to, like you say, it's about learning your own interests again after having, you know, that kind of family time, and you know, you've got to have that time for you, like you say, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, well, that's.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you to all of the volunteers and all the marshals. It was such a brilliant event.